Real good. Okay, let's log out, come back in then as a board member. This is my alias for the board member. This is what the board members have available to them. Board members can see these records and documents that ordinary members don't have the ability to view. Very good. Let's log out. So I'd like to wrap this up by taking another look at this membership list. And I'll come in as a secretary. And let's take a look at this, this page right here. This is the code in front in design view. And you can see we have a grid view here. We have the details view over here. These are composite controls. And then the two data sources. Let's take a look at the code behind page. And you'll see here that there's really nothing going on. Nothing much at all. With each of these event handlers, the button click event handler, for instance, or the page load, item updated, all these different event handlers, all that we're really doing is just turning controls on or off and data binding, that's all. And so there's no code, no disconnected classes here. And so let's look here at the code in front and we'll see that there's quite a lot going on here. We have the grid view, and here the only templated fields we have are for the buttons. And then down here the details view, you'll see we have, formatting, color formatting, and things like that. But all of these fields are just data bound fields. And the only command fields we have are for the two buttons. And then everything else is done right here in the SQL data source definitions. And so we have our insert commands, our update commands, and the parameter declarations are right here. And we don't even have to give them default values because they just data bind. So this is a real slick and easy way of doing things. But this works best when things are really simple. So we have just single database tables that are two-dimensional. We didn't have to do any calculating and selecting where this and where that. So when things are really simple this way, using these data-bound controls and putting the code up front works fine. This is the page members are able to join the club or renew. Now, before we can renew, we have to fill out a new form. That's just club policy. It's always been that way. At least when we're online, these fields are populated with last year's information, and so we just make changes. I want to look at the markup and the code for this page. I could have used a form view, data bound, composite control. It comes in the ASP.NET toolbox, but I just laid this out with regular HTML tables. Let's go to that code page. This is the code in front in design view in Visual Studio. And let's take a look at the source. This is the source. And you can see that I'm using just a table here and text boxes, that sort of thing. Alright. And there's a composite control, radio button list control. So I'm using some of the nice controls. And then here's the SQL data source. Now this is a real time saver. I feel always like I'm cutting corners with this thing because it's just so doggone easy. Here's the SQL data source. We define the connection string here. And our select command, our insert command is right here. And we declare our parameters here too. No default values. Now we'll go back to the code behind here. And we're going to see that there's quite a lot here. I'll scroll down the page load event handler. Now here we're going to populate the form using the username as a parameter. And so we're going to select now from the database all the information that pertains to this user. And then here's the function itself. We're going to start by creating a data table. Now this is a memory resident ADO.NET disconnected class. And what we'll do now is create a SQL connection and define a select command here. and then we'll open the connection. We're going to read the data, and then we're going to load that data into the data table using the upsert command. And we're using a try-catch block. And then the finally block is going to guarantee that we close that connection, which is very important. Now here's a conditional. If data in the data table, then we are in edit mode. And we will populate the form and just say that we will take the text from this field in that memory resident data table and put it in that text box on the page in front. And we'll go right through all the fields that way. Here's some conditionals. This has to do with keeping the email private, keeping the phone number and the address private. Here we have some compound conditional statements. If this and that, and this and that, you see. So what we're doing here is we're talking about how many years have we paid up for. That sort of thing. And so this was interesting to consider and fun to write. Then when we click the button, we will save the data and we will send an email. So there's two function calls. And then we're going to do a server transfer to the payment page rather than a response redirect. Now here's the send mail function. And here's all the credentialing and all the specifics. And we will wrap this in a try-catch block as well. And so if there is an exception, we'll catch that and we'll print the error to the screen. And so the user will know that there was a problem sending email and possibly a suggestion to try later or a reason why. And now here's the save data function that was called. If we're in insert mode, we'll use insert parameters and we'll insert. And here again, if this, then that, all these conditionals here. More if, else statements, more parameter definitions. Here now, if we're in edit mode, then we're going to use update parameters. And here we are. It's the same conditionals actually. And then label texts. Like your information has been submitted for processing, thank you. And then we'll use the SQL data source here. And we'll ask the SQL data source, in this case, to update the database. There's nothing wrong with doing things this way. What I often do is put a SQL data source on the code in front. And I'll use that only for the simplest things like possibly selecting from the database. Select everything and populate the forms. And that's all I'll use that SQL data source for. And if things are complicated, I just create my own connected and disconnected classes and just go from there. Okay, real good? So let's log out. We'll say so long to our old friend W8ZHO.org.